Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandy Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandy Sedgbeer.
Hello. According to pet ownership statistics, America and the UK are both nations that really love their pets, as is evidenced by the huge success of books and movies about dogs, horses and animals, characters like Lassie, Flickr, Rin Tin Tin, and A Dog's Purpose and Marley and Me. It's clear that to most of us, our pets are not just dumb animals. But could the role that they're here to play in our lives be greater even than many of us have considered? Could it be that our animals are here to help us evolve as souls? DANIELLE MacKinnon is a gifted intuitive and soul connection coach who's appeared on national TV and on numerous radio stations around the world. A faculty member of the Omega Institute, the Lily Dale Assembly, and the Kripalu Centre, she's the founder of the DANIELLE MacKinnon School of Animal Communication, and she's a popular facilitator of online and in-person seminars in animal communication, soul contracts, and intuitive senses. DANIELLE MacKinnon joins me today to share how we can develop our spiritual connection with animals and discover what they are in our lives to teach us. DANIELLE MacKinnon, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
DANIELLE, your book, Animal Lessons, Discovering Your Spiritual Connection with Animals, focuses on the idea that animals are in our lives to help us evolve as souls. Before we delve into the book and what it has to teach us, I want to hear a little bit about your own journey from successful MBA on the corporate fast track to animal psychic, author and teacher of animal communication. And in particular, I want to know whether an animal played a role in your transition.
Ooh, that's a good way to ask that question. I don't have the most straight path to get where I am today, as I never planned on doing this. When I was young, I planned on being a veterinarian, and I wanted to write books. So I guess it's kind of the same thing, because I'm working with animals and people and helping animals, and I'm writing books. But it didn't look like this in my head when I was 12. Growing up, I was the sensitive one. I loved animals. My safety was in animals, as I had an abusive childhood, and so I developed my sensitivity is kind of what kept me going. You know, I had to be able to read a situation, read people, but that also meant that I kind of hold myself off a little bit. But the animals, my dog, my parakeet, my many hamsters and caterpillars and all of the other animals that I had in my life, they were really my lifeline. But that wasn't quite normal. You know, everybody else had their dog, they loved their dog, but they didn't have the same feelings about their dog that I had. And I always thought that I could know what they were saying, know what they were thinking. But I grew up in an environment that said, no, you don't know, you're being too sensitive. And so frequently I was kind of grounded I couldn't go to the mall, to certain areas of the mall, because there'd be a pet store there and it would upset me. And, you know, it was kind of a tough childhood because nobody really understood, including myself, that my sensitivities were allowing me to connect with energy, with animals, that all of this part of me existed. So I spent a lot of the time growing up trying to be like everybody else, trying to not be sensitive, beating myself up for being sensitive as well. And it really wasn't until I got into college that I was more on my own and free to start exploring things. And in college, I started exploring meditation. I was having terrible panic attacks, anxiety, and depression. I know now that it's because I was so sensitive and I didn't know how to handle this. So I was constantly trying to censor myself and tamp it all down. But I was just exploring that stuff while at the same time trying to be normal. Those two things don't exactly go together, because if you're going to explore things that are so different, you can't really do that and be like everybody else. And I wasn't like everybody else anyway. Eventually I got married, and my husband and I, of course, had, right away you got to get a dog, because I was obviously a big animal person. And the part of the question where you said, I want to know if an animal played a role. And yes, animals played roles the whole time through. So what happened was, we moved back to New England. We had been living in California. We moved back to New England. We were both going to grad school. I was getting my MBA. My husband is a scientist, so he was getting his master's. And our dog got very sick, and nobody could figure it out. We didn't know why she suddenly got sick. She was very young. She was like an 8-month-old puppy. And she ended up staying at the veterinarian for several days in a row. We had a $4,000 bill. We didn't have the money to pay for that. I was freaking out. What am I going to do about her? And so I went to the gym to try and work out some of my angst. I wasn't going to work because I was so nervous for her. And I saw a friend, and she said, at the parking lot of the gym, she said, well, there's a pet psychic that lives in town. Why don't you go see him? And I had been told all my life that this stuff isn't real, that people will take your money, that none of that other side, intuition, none of that was real. But, of course, I've been exploring meditation, and I've had these inklings all along, so I immediately said, all right, I'm going to see that guy. And I took my dog out of the vet, and I grabbed my science-based husband, and we went to visit this guy at the event that he was doing. And this was so supposed to happen, that he went and connected with my dog. We were outside in the parking lot, because you can't bring a dog into a conference hall. And kind of looked at her, and he looked at me, and he looked at my husband, and he went back to her, and she's pretty mellow. Normally she's not mellow. So right away I was going, something is different here. And after a moment, he came back and he said, okay, so the reason that she's sick is because she ate corn cobs. And she ate the corn cobs because she was anxious, since you and your husband have been fighting about your mother. And he was mostly right. It was my mother-in-law. But same thing. I was willing right then. I'm fine. That's fine. He would have had no idea about any of that. And because he was right, that sentence that he spoke right there changed my life. My dog Bella saying to him this exact stuff, and he being able to pass this on to me, made me go, why am I in the corporate world? What am I doing? I can do this. This is what I want from my life. This is how I want to help people. And that kind of set me off on this path of working with animals and not really. I wanted to get out of the corporate world. So that
was your husband supportive?
It all up.
Was your husband supportive?
So he was supportive, but only as supportive as his beliefs would let him be. He grew up Roman Catholic, and so to him, being intuitive or spiritual or psychic, he associated with that Roman Catholic, strict Roman Catholic upbringing. So he's like, yeah, go ahead and do this, but I don't want anything to do with it, but you can go ahead and do with it. I'm fine with that. So for the first few years of me exploring this, he was totally good with me learning and working to earn money and that kind of stuff, but he didn't want any part of it. And then his hockey team was the Bruins were in the Stanley Cup playoffs, and he liked for me to watch hockey with him, and I was fine. I'm like, all right, I don't love hockey, but it's fine. We can do this together. But he started realizing that every time I said I didn't want to watch a game, I'd sit there for a minute and then I'd be like, you know what, I'm going to go do something else. The Bruins were losing. And so he figured out that I knew what was going on. And you know, I'd already been doing it for like 11 years, but it was then when he went, oh, wait a minute, she knows. So he starts watching me, and he'd be like, if you're going to watch the game, sit and watch the game, and you have to watch the whole thing, and you can't say anything to me about it, because I was giving him clues as to who's going to win, et cetera. And that was kind of his turning point. But in the beginning, he was supportive, but didn't participate. Now he's a hydrogeologist, and he'll call me, hey, Danielle, I've got this well here I'm digging, because I'm not just psychic with animals, I'm psychic with people. And he'll say, what's the flow going to be? Is this one going to be fruitful? Which is the best one? And so I'll give him that information. We have kind of an ongoing, it's fun to do, because it helps him be really good at his job, but it's also just really cool to be right.
Yeah. So you're a great asset.
So it's very easy, because what do I care if it's a well that is a lot or not, you know?
Yeah. So you founded your own School of Animal Communication, which offers courses, classes, and training in soul level communication. What distinguishes soul level communication from, say, someone else's method of communicating with animals?
I think it's a good question. The best way for me to explain that is for me to explain how I developed soul level animal communication, because I never planned on doing it. Or let me ask you, Sammy, so when you think of animal communication, what I used to think of is, okay, you connect psychically with the animal, and you find out what the problem is. Why are you barking so much? I'm barking because I don't like Harry. And then I, as the animal communicator, I say, okay, dog, stop barking at Harry. That doesn't work, and it's causing a problem in the family. And then problem solved. I told him what to do, and it was over. Is that kind of what you think of? I think it's what most people think of, that we solve these problems with animals by doing animal communication.
It is what most people think of, but it's not what I think of, because I happen to have a friend who does, who is very psychic and has given me a lot of evidence of, why my dog was in my life. But I haven't found that to be incredibly common.
No, it's not, and it's not what when I had that session with my dog, with Bella, when she was sick, and she did pass the corn cobs and live to be 14. I was like, this is great. I'm going to start a business, and I'm going to go and I'm going to fix all these animals that are having problems in their lives with their humans. And I thought I would just connect psychically and tell them all what to do. I didn't know at that time either what animals were really offering to us. So I started a business, and I started, going about it that way. And it was cool, because the people and their animals that I was working with, the people were like, yeah, you're really connecting with my animal. That's his personality. That's great. And they loved that. But I wasn't having the success at making the animal do what the human wanted. And didn't really understand why. And then finally I started asking the animals, why are you doing this? Versus telling them to stop doing it or telling them to change their behavior, which is a very human-centric way to be. Dog, you're in this human's life. You need to do what this human wants you to do.
Yes.
So, and I didn't know. I just didn't know at the time. So then when I started asking the animals, well, why are you doing this? They started giving me answers like, well, I'm barking this much because I'm all hyped up, because she is anxious all the time, my human. And if she can calm herself down, I will calm down as well. And their answers started to be about the human rather than the animal's own circumstances. And which, all right, so we're starting to get a feel for, wait, there's more going on here. However, that's not the business I wanted. I wanted the business where I just told the animals what to do and what to change, and it was all fixed. So I started kind of pushing back on the animals. That's cool. I see the human has an anxiety. Okay, but you just need to stop barking, or you just need to stop clawing that sofa, or whatever the challenge was. And I resisted it for quite a while. until I ran into Jesus the Chihuahua. And Jesus the Chihuahua, his human brought him to me because he was peeing in a plant in the kitchen. And so I thought, well, this is great. I can fix this. I can just tell him not to pee in the plant. I'm still resisting this other level of information from the animals. And when it came time for me to address the problem with Jesus, psychically, I'm having a conversation with Jesus, and I'm saying, you're peeing in the plant in the kitchen. You got to stop. You've got to stop doing this. It's causing a problem in your house. Your humans are upset. You got to stop doing this. And I think I said to him, are you peeing in the plant because you don't know where outside is? And Jesus basically said, no, I know where outside is, Danielle. Okay, are you tired? Are you lazy? Do you have kidney stones? I kind of played 20 questions. I went through all these different iterations of why he could possibly be peeing in the plant. Because, of course, at that time I was assuming that I knew more. So I would be able to find the answer that he would agree with. And he didn't agree with any of my potential answers. Finally, I kind of broke down and I said, all right, why are you peeing in the plant? And he proceeded to tell me that his female human, the one who brought him to me, was in an abusive situation. And whenever he peed in the plant was when the abuse was happening, and he was doing it to remind her that this is a time to take care of her own needs above all else. And that he would stop peeing in the plant when she started taking care of herself in that way. And I really didn't want to tell her that. She didn't tell me she was in an abusive situation. She didn't open up to me that way. And I felt like that's unfair. I shouldn't have to say that. Couldn't you just be sick? Is it something else? And then finally he helped me through telling her what was going on. He gave me the words to say, and I said it in a very soft way so that I wasn't, putting her in an uncomfortable position. And it was that moment that I realized, wow, this animal is putting himself in a challenging, dangerous place in order to help his human evolve and grow and learn how to get out of this situation, learn how to take care of herself. So that is what soul-level animal communication is all about. It's all about that ulterior motive that the animals have at the soul level to take the people that they're involved with and help those people become the best people they can be, reach their potential, grow, and learn the things about themselves that they've perhaps been resisting learning all along. That was the long answer to your question.
Yeah. So really, rather than looking at, our pets as our creatures, we're looking at them as our guides. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. My guest is gifted animal communicator, intuitive and author Danielle MacKinnon. And we're discussing her latest book, Animal Lessons, Discovering Your Spiritual Connection with Animals. We'll be back with more on animal communication with Danielle MacKinnon after this break.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
I'm Fidel Nshombo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee, and they resettle you to America, and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Danielle MacKinnon, thinking about animals in the context of being our guides. When I look at the statistics, it shows that by far, dogs are by far the most popular animal for people to have. Cats come second, and then, horses and other animals be after that. Would you say that it's more dogs that have this ability to be our guides, or do horses, cats, birds and other creatures also communicate in the same way and come into our lives in order to teach us lessons?
I agree. With dogs, it's usually easier to see, but every single animal, whether that animal is a pet or a wild animal or an animal that you read about on social media, they all have this capacity, and they all access this capacity for everybody that they come into contact with, or everybody who gets to know them in some way. So even the squirrel that has been hit by a car and is dead on the side of the road, there's something for you to learn from that. And that squirrel at the soul level knows that. It's crazy.
So do you believe that our animals choose us and that we have prearranged contracts to work together?
I do. And the reason I believe that is because that's what they've told me. The animals have told me again and again. They've told me that we as human beings, we have these soul lessons that we're working on learning. Usually the soul lessons revolve around mastering unconditional love, some form of mastering unconditional love of ourselves and then of everybody else. So I may believe I'm not good enough, or I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not safe. That's usually how one of the 4 ways that these lessons manifest themselves. So when we incarnate into our human bodies to evolve our soul, we're working to learn one or all of these lessons. Animals know this prior to incarnating. They basically get together with our soul and say, hey, the animal soul gets together with our soul and says, hey, I'll help you work on that one in this upcoming lifetime. And so when we incarnate, you could call it a contract, an agreement, but somehow that animal is going to come into your life and in some way give you the opportunity through your relationship with them to evolve and grow. Yeah, it's definitely a prearranged thing.
In Animal Lessons, you make the point that animals not only possess the capacity to understand the full range of our human emotions, they often take those emotions into themselves. Now, I want you to expand on that. Before you do, however, this is what happened to me. Okay. My dog came into my life. I was told as he was leaving by my psychic friend that my dog, and she didn't know when he'd come into my life, she didn't know me then, but he took on the emotions at a time when I was having huge emotional difficulties and challenges in my life. I found that point really interesting.
So, yeah, they basically choose one of 3 ways to help us. And the one you're talking about is mirroring. So the animal will mirror your emotional state, will mirror your behavior. And it sounds like with you, it was mirroring your emotional state because a lot of the time it's easier for us to see it in somebody else and address it than it is for us to see it in ourselves. So that mirroring piece tends to be a pretty popular way that the animals choose to help us. Did you find that, I'm sorry, you said it was your dog?
It was my dog, yes.
Okay. Did you find that by your dog mirroring your emotions, that it helped you understand yourself better?
Not at the time. Much later. What I realised in retrospect was that I was in a place where I was just holding myself together. So it was very, very hard for me to express emotion in any way. I never used to like appearing to be weak or vulnerable. So I would really kind of clamp down. What the dog did for me was it gave me an opportunity to express emotion. I could express emotion to the dog that I couldn't express to anyone else.
Oh, yeah, that's the third way. So actually, that's not even mirroring. I'm sorry, I misunderstood. That's the third way. So there's three ways that they do it. They can mirror, meaning they hold the same way you hold. They feel the same way you feel. They act the same way. They model, which is maybe somebody's dealing with depression, and so their dog decides, well, you know what? She's depressed. I'm going to be incredibly happy, so I can show her what that is like. The third way, and it's a way that it took me a little while to understand. It took a lot of readings with animals for me to fully get it, is when the animal provides you with something that creates an emotion and a support that you've never had before. A lot of the time it shows up by, wow, I've never been able to talk to anyone before about this kind of thing, and yet my dog is my confidant. Yes. My horse is everything to me. And it sounds like that is what you're experiencing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I have friends who walk dogs. That's what they do for a living, and they're constantly telling me how the dogs are mirroring their owners.
Yes, yeah, and which is cool to see, but can also be frustrating. I would imagine being a dog walker who's conscious is hard. Because now you're seeing all this stuff show up in the animal. The animal's doing this for the human, but the dog wouldn't just be doing it for their human. The dog would also be doing it for the dog walker.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, very much so. So how do we figure out what lesson our pet is teaching us, what role they're playing in our life?
So there are lots of ways to do it, but I've kind of put together where to start, because it takes the first piece of this is that you have to go into the relationship with the animal with the belief, or at least the trying to believe, that this animal actually knows more than you, that this animal is not just a 3D based creature, but actually has a bigger purpose and a bigger understanding. This animal in your life is a guru, a teacher, a mentor, a trainer. So many of us, even complete and total animal lovers, we look at animals like they're in need of us, that we know more. And this is what I was doing when I first started connecting with animals. I thought I knew more. I know the answers. And yet what I hear from the animals all the time is they know the answer. They've mastered unconditional love. We haven't, so they're ahead of us. So the first thing that you need to do in order to understand your animal lesson is give in to that idea. Let it exist. The animal knows more than you. So that means any behavior with this animal, any experience, any emotion that comes up, all of this is part of the package. There are no coincidences. Now, when you can do that, then you can go into the big first step, which is looking for the place in the relationship with that animal that creates the biggest wave. The biggest emotional wave brings up the most for you. So for you with your dog, it was this dog is my confidant. I can tell him anything. Wow, this is amazing. I haven't had this before. To me, that feels like that's where your biggest wave was. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
And so when you find that biggest wave, that's the area where the animal is working with you to teach you. So, for example, if walking my dog Bella on the leash, it kind of irritated me. All right, yep, you're not walking that well, what's up? But it was just kind of an irritation. She's not great on the leash. But then when people come over, I'm embarrassed. I feel like a bad owner because she's jumping on everybody. There's the big wave, because that's where for me, it was angst. For you, it was big love. But either way, that it's not looking for the little tiny places. It's where the pieces that come up that make you almost like look at yourself. That's where you start to look for the lesson. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. So when you're teaching and you teach people, I mean, you say that we all have this ability and you teach people to develop it in themselves.
Yeah.
Where do you start?
Where do I start? Well, the first place I start, because I agree with what you say, which is that everybody has this ability. The place that I start is helping people first, before connecting to an animal, helping them get themselves into an energetic and emotional state where they can receive the information. And this is, I feel like it's my power pill to doing this work, because so many people, they want to learn animal communication. They want to open up their psychic senses, clean psychic senses as well, not just animal psychic senses. And yet they go into it full of doubt, worried, concerned. They're rethinking everything that's happening. They're judging what so-and-so received next to them versus they're not getting anything. And when you're in that type of emotional state versus being present in the moment, being present with your body, in a less judgmental place, just kind of being grounded within yourself, it's so much easier to do the work when you're grounded within yourself. So that's actually where I start. It's helping people learn how to align themselves, because once they're aligned, the information comes in from the animal, and there's so much less double thinking it. There's so much less going, I'm not sure, I don't know, I'm not going to say that feels stupid, because my biggest thing is helping people get over that hurdle. The animals, I would say it's kind of Pac-Man. Do you remember Pac-Man, that from
Yes.
the 80s?
Yes.
Well,
yes,
and in Pac-Man, you're going alone and you're eating the little dots, but then every once in a while there's a power pill, and you eat that power pill, and suddenly it's all right, I can eat way more dots now. I'm doing even better. The animals are the power pills, because they are sending us the information. They're cluing into us every day, every minute, when they are figuring out how best can I give this information to Sandy where she's going to most easily pick it up and be able to understand it. They are doing that for us. It's different from being plain old psychic. We've got this power pill of the animal looking at us, understanding us, to give us that information for us personally the best way.
It's very frustrating. I mean, they're very good at coming up to you and looking at you very intently. And I was dog sitting for my daughter the other week, and I know some of the cues of her dog, but sometimes it would just come and sit in front of me and just stare into my eyes. So I'd open the door, do you want to go outside? I'd do this, I'd do that. And still, he would sit there just staring at me. And that was the point when it was, I wish I could communicate with you.
Yeah, and that's also one of the things that people have a hard time with, is a lot of the time when you are doing psychic communication with an animal, the 3D visual of the animal, meaning what the animal is doing in your life at that moment, doesn't match. So you may connect with an animal who is, talking to you about your purpose and how to get there and all this stuff, and yet then he turns around and he's licking his bum,
Yeah.
So there are these two very distinct levels, and sometimes they coordinate. Sometimes the animal is looking at you with the wisdom in his eyes, and you're getting the wisdom in the communication as well, but sometimes not. So he could be trying to give you very wise information, and he could just be giving you love.
Yeah, could be. I mean, you could fall into those eyes, couldn't you? They make your heart melt. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with intuitive and author DANIELLE MacKINNON about her book, Animal Lessons, Discovering Your Spiritual Connection with Animals, in which she not only shares how we can develop the ability to communicate with animals, but also discover why they're in our lives. We'll be back with more from DANIELLE MacKINNON after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living. A chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Danielle, can we learn to communicate with every animal species? Are they all open to it?
What a great question. And in my experience, yes. Now, have I spoken with every animal species? No. But the big picture that the animals have given me is that this is why they're here. They're here to connect with us, communicate with us, and to help us grow and master unconditional love. So while I haven't spoken to every single species out there, it wouldn't make sense to me that some species would be like, no, we're not talking to you. But they want to do everything in their power to help us. So my answer would be yes, based on my experience.
Well, have you ever seen the documentary The Octopus in My House?
No.
I think I don't know if it's available on HBO or Netflix or something, but I watched it a couple of weeks ago about a scientist in Alaska who specialises in studying octopus, and he decided to have one in his home, one of the local species, and he had a big tank installed, and they actually filmed this and discovered how intelligent this octopus is. And when the man's daughter used to come and sit down in that room to watch television, the octopus would go to one end of its tank where it had the perfect view of the television and watch with her. And, it made me think about animal communication because, this man was just besotted with this octopus and it brought so much into his life, which, away from the laboratory, he wouldn't have got the same kind of bond with the octopus if he was just, working with it in the laboratory. And it just really opened up a whole new avenue of thinking about animals and intelligence and our ability to communicate and bond with them.
That I will absolutely watch that. I have a hard time watching movies or TV shows or even the news when animals come up because I can connect in and at that 3D level, a lot of animals in our lives right now on Earth are uncomfortable. They're suffering. Yes. At the soul level, they're not. but I can feel that 3D suffering level, so I tend to stay away. But that one sounds like something I could completely and totally do. And here's the really cool thing about it. The animals know what we need to grow, to evolve. So this octopus knew, in this situation, I'm going to behave in this way because it will open up this scientist. And it works out perfectly. Not every animal is going to interact with us in such a deep and profound way. Some animals will interact with us to help us with our lessons, but it'll be in a smaller way, kind of like a supporting role versus the octopus and that man. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Well, it did help the man and his daughter, and I think, my sense was that the octopus was very happy. It was actually very mischievous too. It would play with them, and I think you would enjoy that. But there is another aspect to your work that we haven't discussed, and you mentioned this at the end of your book, that in addition to individual animals assisting single or multiple humans, each animal species as a whole is also assisting human consciousness. Say a little bit about that.
So an individual animal, let's go to a dog, can be helping somebody learn to love themselves or learn that they're worthy, and they're going to have very specific interactions with one another and experiences to help that person learn and grow. But then if we go with, it's almost like there are generalizations we can make about animals, and it's kind of how you figure it out, although at the end of the book I write out each one very specifically. But for example, dogs, if you look at like Cesar Millan and dog trainers, they're always about dogs need a leader, this kind of thing. The dog species in general, yes, they function the way they do because they're helping people become leaders in their own lives. They're helping people in general, because this is how a dog pack functions, they're helping people become controlling of their own lives without being domineering. There's a lot of people who don't understand that about dogs, and they think it's domineering, it's control, it's not allowing anything to happen. But it's really about an energy. And so the species of dog, how they function with one another, they're modeling for us a way that we can be healthier and happier within ourselves. Cats have their own lesson they're teaching us. It's really interesting when you step back and look at horses are about balance. When you step back and look at what each species and what we know of each species, you don't even have to be psychic, but you can start to kind of figure it out, what each species is doing.
Now, you teach animal communication. You're presenting, in-person courses and trainings. You also have an online study course. Tell us about your online course.
My online course, my instant access course, is actually pretty cool. It's video-based, and you can basically take it whenever you want, and there's one lesson a week delivered for 6 weeks, and there's homework in there, and I basically take you through the whole process of learning. You start with the energy management piece, which we talked about before, putting yourself in that position where you're most primed and ready to be able to receive the information. And then I take people through my technique for connecting intuitively with the animal. By the second class, the second lesson, that's when they actually do their first communication, which is really, really fun. And then there's another course after that, and then I actually certify people to become animal communicators. So they're called soul-level animal communicators, and help them start their businesses, because so many people want to help animals. So many people, their hearts are open and they see what's going on, and they want to have a business where they're working with people in their
Absolutely.
animals. So it's
what a wonderful business.
I have one too.
Yeah. Now, on October the 18th, you're doing a 7-day horse and soul retreat in the rainforest of Costa Rica, which sounds very exotic. Horse and soul. How is it different when you're working with dogs than when you're working with horses?
Oh my. Well, so Horses, so dogs are kind of in our everyday life, and they are working on a different type of lesson, right? We already talked about how the species of dog is working on helping us be leaders within ourselves. Horses, because of their size and because they still, they work with their energy much more clearly than any other animal I've ever encountered. The power of how the horse works with you on your lesson, there's a lot more power there. So somebody could work with their dog and have this incredible experience. When you bring a horse in addition to that, it takes it to like the nth, it takes it to a crazy level of growth. People, when they work with horses, from this point of view, that everything that horse is doing is meant to help you grow and evolve. Not from the point of view that a lot of people take with horses, which I need to make the horse do this, and that horse needs to listen to me. You know, that's where a lot of people come from, and a well-behaved horse means you've done a good job as a horse person. This is not what it's about. This is where the horse is actually helping us be our best selves to create union with the horse, which then means everybody works together. It's a very different approach. I absolutely love going and doing these retreats with people because the growth that happens in those, 5, 6, 7 days, it's crazy, and it gets me all revved up. You're talking about my favorite thing right now.
Is there one experience you've had among all the experiences with communicating with animals that really stands out for any reason for you?
The one that pops into my head, it's not my experience, although I was there, and it's actually an experience with my husband. I do an annual trip to Bimini to swim with the wild dolphins each summer. I didn't do it this summer because we moved and my son went to school, and it's just crazy in my life. But I do an annual trip, and he came on one of the trips. And usually on that trip, everybody says, hey, will you teach us some animal communication? We want to learn this. So I did a workshop one morning, and my husband, the scientist, he said, I'll try this. So he sits down around the table with the rest of the group, and I run through, here's how you do it, and I do my whole spiel, teach them everything, and then they go to do their first communication. And I had them communicate with an animal. And I didn't tell them the name of the animal. I just said, communicate with this animal that I'm thinking of in my head. And so I chose him first to share the information that he received. And he said, okay, I think it's a little bird that has these little teeny tiny wings, and they go bloop, 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 and they flutter, and he keeps dipping down and up and down and up when he's flying. Well, now this is somebody, he's a science background, he's getting his PhD in civil engineering, he loves me, and so he's opening to this stuff, but he didn't ever think he could do it. Well, he had been talking with a fish named Kevin, and it was a little goldfish. And so the little wings that he was talking about were actually the little fins, and you can imagine how a goldfish dips up and down. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever, that he was able to clue in, and I knew he would be able to, but he didn't. But what did he do as a result? He said, I didn't get it right. And he thought, well, because he didn't understand how it works, that his assumptions about what these things meant were the things that got in the way. But he actually got really wonderful information for me just having said, hey, connect with the animal in my head. So for me, that's what animal communication is all about, is about removing all of the assumptions and the have-tos and it must be, and just being okay with whatever comes in. When we're okay with whatever it is, this is what the animals want us to know. We stop judging ourselves. We live more easily. We don't feel like we have to push. We have to go. And so his experience really shined, really cast a light on that for me.
Animals don't have the things that give meaning to our lives, and yet they seem incredibly happy to live under conditions that we would find intolerable. So, the assumption there has to be that their inner lives are very different from ours. what can you tell us about the inner lives of animals?
What can I tell you about the inner lives of animals? I'm not even sure how to answer that, because when I connect with them, they're usually focused on what they can do for us. And not in a subservient way, but in a mentorship way. So here I am the mentee. I'm not the one who has all the information. So they're focused on helping me learn and grow. It's a very different way of being. They are in service to us, according to them. But so many people hear me say that and they go, no, I don't like that. I don't want them to be my slave. I'm not saying that at all. They view the fact that they are here to be in service as a gift to us. And it's just a very different way of being, because so often we as humans, we look at being in service as, a waitress is a servant, that kind of thing. And it's not, first of all, I don't look at it that way in real life with a waitress, but many people have that type of idea about what in service is, that it's something demeaning. And that's not what the animals are looking at it like. That's not how they're trying to get more and more people to understand that this is their gift.
I was very intrigued at one part in your book where you say that many people believe that their animals grieve the loss of an animal that has shared their life or home. But when you've intuitively connected with an animal to ask about this, you've often received some unexpected and surprising information about what is actually going on there. Can you share with us what's going on when we think they're grieving?
Yeah. So, and they do grieve. They grieve the physical presence loss of their companion or the other animal. But they're very connected to the other side, way more so than we are, way more so than I am, way more so than even a medium is. So they don't lose the intuitive connection to the animal that has crossed over, but usually what happens is their physical life changes. It was two cats that were always together. And so that physical loss does create a sadness. But what I find usually creates the bigger sadness is actually the change in the lifestyle and the human grieving. The animal that's left here will be reacting to that more so than the loss of the animal that crossed over, because they can still, call them up anytime and say, hey, but it's the human that really creates the challenge there for the animals that are left.
Now, you developed the Be Open community. What is that all about?
Yes. So I found that people who love animals like I love animals want to be around other people who love animals like I love animals. And they want to connect with them, and they want to share, and they want to not feel like they're so crazy and weird. And so the Be Open community is my community of people who are kind of all coming from the same place, so that, they do believe that their animals are helping them and that it is possible to connect, and they want to play in that. They want to share, and they want to find support in that. So in Be Open, we do webinars and classes and practices and all sorts of, it's just basically let's all get together online and play together. And I'm in there all the time doing various basically classes or what people are asking for. For me, it helps me because in my everyday life, it's not like everybody around me is an animal communicator. So it's nice to be with people who just love animals or are open to intuition, like I am. And actually, I have a special. I forgot about that. Did you want me to talk about that now?
We're almost out of time, but very quickly, if you just want to tell us what the special is.
Yeah, it's you can get 10 days free in the community if you go to DANIELLEMacKinnon.com/OM.
Wonderful. We love it. We love it when we can give our listeners something extra. Danielle, very quickly before we close, this has to be a very brief answer. What do you think animals most want humans to know?
It's very clear. They want humans to know that they are loved.
Beautiful. And yeah, that's all we need to know, isn't it? Danielle MacKinnon.
Yes, that's it.
Thank you. I really enjoyed your book, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sandy.
Animal Lessons, Discovering Your Spiritual Connection with Animals by Danielle MacKinnon is published by Llewellyn Publications. For more information about the book and Danielle's courses, visit DANIELLEMacKinnon.com. She's got a course coming up in November at the Kripalu Centre in Massachusetts. And do check out her YouTube channel, which features a number of short videos and series on very interesting topics. I'm Sandy Sedgbeer. Thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to being with you at the same time next week. Till then, it's goodbye from me.